So what I'm talking about is the 7 revenue streams and being socially enterprising. And the reason I talk about being socially enterprising is opening up the idea that, as a consequence of what we've experienced in COVID-19 and what's happening now and into the future, that being socially enterprising is what not-for-profits need to do to position ourselves more into the future. Now, I notice that a lot of your organisations actually understand social enterprise, and some of you actually acknowledge that you are a social enterprise or have social enterprise entities that you work with. So that's really positive to see. But I'll just take you on a journey on what I see are the characteristics of being socially enterprising. So we know that social enterprise, the social traders, says that they're businesses that trade intentionally to tackle social problems, improve communities, provide access to employment and training, or help the environment. But let's have a look at how social enterprise work across this continuum of businesses, from not-for-profits, the traditional charity, to the traditional business. So as you can see here, in the green space, this is where we're seeing the models of social enterprises. So they can be not-for-profits and a not-for-profits legal structure where 75% of the income is generated from market revenue. And that means trading goods and services. Then you have social businesses where all the profits are reinvested into the organisation. So it's interesting with this model, they can be not-for-profit or for-profit. Then you've got mission-driven for-profit enterprises, which, for example, the B Corp, and they tend to be only for-profit businesses. And then, of course, you've got the normal business that donates and volunteers, and your pure profit orientation. So this is a really useful a continuum to get a sense of how there's that blurring between the traditional charity and the traditional business. And as you guys know, this is growing. The social enterprise movement is growing extensively across the world, across Australia, and more businesses are the mission-driven approach and actively being CSR or corporate social responsibility focused. So there's a greater opportunity to work with these organisations. So then let's look at these characteristics for being socially enterprising. So the first 3 that I've created focus on your mindset. Now that means a strength-based approach and abundance mindset. And I'll be exploring about that after the slide. And then recognizing that resources and assets are everywhere. And that let's focus not just on funding, but let's focus on revenue. And that there are many revenue streams to look at. Now, the next 3 characteristics focus traditionally on what we know as social enterprise, and that is being outcomes focused with a clear social or impact value aligned with your strategic plan and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The next is being enterprising and business focused with clear commercial value. But the third part of that, or number 6, is where you reinvest the majority of the profit back into the organisations. So even if it's a socially enterprising venture, that's what you need to be looking at. Then the third 3 characteristics I see in the operations, where you choose the best structure for your socially enterprising activity to meet your social and commercial values. And you network and collaborate with the social enterprise sector and across sectors, because social enterprise exists in so many different sectors across the whole board, within the community sector and the business world, and also across many different entities. And then, of course, how do we achieve being socially enterprising? We need to be innovative. And in the world today, that's being socially innovative, adapting, prepared to experiment and being persistent and committed to the future you wanted to live into, but constantly learning. So that's the 9 characteristics that I see. So the first we look at strengths. Yes?
Sorry, I was just going to say, are you meant to be sharing your screen at the moment?
Yes.
Because we're not seeing your screen. So do you know how to share your screen through the little box in the top right corner?
Oh, no. Okay.
That's okay. I think I've been able to keep up with everything you said so far, so hopefully that's universally true. But yeah, if you go to the top right, the little up arrow in the box and share content, and then choose which screen to share.
Oh, shoot. Share content. So the 3 dots.
So if you go to next to where it says leave and the red box at the top right, next to that up arrow, share content.
Ah, okay. Can people see things now?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. Well, I'll just do a quick show of this one now. So, just so that you see, this is really valuable, this model for the traditional charity to the traditional business, and those 3 there being the social enterprises. Really powerful model to visualize. And I mentioned through the characteristics, and then we look at strength-based approach. Now, the strength-based approach is like appreciative inquiry, and that's believing the best in your organization and the best in your community and seeking the best. And then the abundance mindset is shifting away from a scarcity mindset of we don't have enough to an abundance mindset, we do have enough. It is possible. Our people can create things that we can't imagine now but could in the future. So we need to work from both a strength and abundance mindset. And then we can look at 3 forms of resources or assets in which your organization could use for a socially enterprising activity. So there's the individual form, which is your board, your staff, your volunteers and your members. Your organization, which is your physical resources, your finances, your intellectual property, the stories, your reputation, and then your community, your citizens, other organizations, networks and businesses. These are all assets that you can actually work with, and of course you've already done this, to actually focus on your social enterprising venture. Now, of course, in the community sector, we're great at acknowledging a range of assets, and we work with community asset mapping. So that's a great tool to actually identify the range of resources or assets that you can work with. Now, the other part of the picture is recognizing that it's not just fundraising, it's revenue raising. And revenue as a formula equals funding plus earned income. So there is a tendency sometimes with not-for-profits to just focus on the concept of funding. But when we broaden it with our social enterprising activity to earned income, we need to use the language of revenue and revenue raising to be able to achieve this. So then that brings about what are revenue streams. So we've got here 7 different types of revenue streams. Now, the first 3 revenue streams focused on a philanthropic approach. And so not-for-profits, of course, are really, really well attuned to these 3. And that's looking at grants, individual contribution like donations, members, crowdfunding, which has just boomed over the last 10 years, and corporate philanthropic endeavours. So those first 3 are the philanthropic approach. Now, the next 4 are much more the earned income using an enterprising approach. So here we have an earned income, and in actual fact, in Australia, over 50% of not-for-profits today use earned income as a funding stream, which is fantastic. We're becoming more sustainable by just moving beyond a philanthropic approach. But the other method that's really growing is a resource cycling approach, where you're actually utilizing old and used resources to create new resources. Then there's the social enterprise, or having a shared value in a social enterprise, or an intermediary source, which actually provides income for you as a social enterprise. And then the most enterprising approach, which is the social investments. And we've got the Impact Investing Hub, and there's a growing number of different ways in which you can access impact investing. Now, of course, these two here, you really need to have a very strong business approach to what you're trying to achieve. So let's now look at, we've recognized that we want to be resourceful, and we want to have an abundant mindset, and we recognize that we can have a range of revenues, and the blended revenue model is really a powerful way for being more sustainable. Then now look at what it is we're trying to create as our social purpose. So in the social innovation, we have what's called a change model theory, or this looking at our social impact value. So there's a little bit of different language. So I've used social impact value. So that has a theory of a problem. So the theory of a problem, of course, is the context of the problem and really trying to get down to what's causing the problem. So it could be an issue around homeless people, and an example is a not-for-profit, the Mission Australia up at Cairns, have Cafe One. And their theory of the problem is that they have a number of homeless people in Cairns, which they're trying to house. But an issue with their housing is that they need to have an income to be able to maintain their housing. So they wanted to actually look at, okay, what can we have as a theory of change, which means what are the outcomes we want to achieve and what are the assumptions around that? So the outcome they wanted to achieve is an opportunity for these homeless people to gain employment, and to be able to, as well as gain employment, to gain greater social confidence within themselves, greater dignity, greater ability to reconnect to their communities. So their theory of action was to come up with a way in which they could educate and train these homeless people in areas in which they can get a job. So they chose the hospitality industry. So that's their social purpose, and that's embedded with the Mission Australia. But what they also need to do in a social enterprise is have commercial value. So the commercial value then has a similar sort of model structure. So look at this. So for not-for-profits, we're already pretty good at coming across with our social value. We can use that similar approach to come up with our commercial value. We then have to be clear about the customer's problem, solution as a product, and experimenting and developing an offering. So Cafe One, they recognised that there was a need for being able to provide refreshments at sporting events and events around the Cairns region. So Cafe One is actually a mobile van. It's a cafe van, like the food vans that are out there. So they then trained homeless people to actually work on the food van, to go to events, to then actually provide refreshments to people at the events. And they experimented with this. Now, what they recognised, though, was what's really significant for not-for-profits and social enterprises is trying to find that balance between the impact value and the commercial value. And that balance is extremely dynamic, and it can often be a conflicting tension that you have to try and manage. Now, of course, it's important to align them with the UN SDGs, and I recognise that some of your organisations have that on your websites. And as you guys know, there's 17 goals focusing on, healthier people, equity, a healthier planet, lots of different ways in which we can improve the world and the people in it and the planet into the future by 2030. So it's really important, as well as your strategic direction, to align your social enterprising activity to the global goals. Now, there are 3 different types of social enterprises: an employment-focused social enterprise, like Mission Australia's Cafe One; social enterprises that provide services in a direct response to a social need, like the DLD project. Now, that's focusing on language disabilities. And so they provide resources and training and information for people experiencing language difficulties. And they provide that as a service. And it's, as a social enterprise, offers that. Now, there's social enterprise who generate an income for other services like TradeMart. Now, you might have seen TradeMart. They have these wonderfully colourful shirts that they sell. So they trade it, and then the money from that goes towards a number of initiatives to support mental health issues. And they focus on the conversation and starting conversation around mental health for tradies and the tradie industry. So these are the range of different types of social enterprises. And there's so many different types of legal structures and identities, but we're just making it simple for the presentation now. So maybe you can start small rather than just being a social enterprise or setting up a separate organization which you actually have and own. Yet you're not for profit with this social enterprise. So starting small might be a project that fulfills your mission, a project that makes money, which is a product, a service, or an event, and can add value to businesses if you choose them to be partners. So for an example, I have Stronger Boards. The Stronger Boards focuses on governing well, lead with strength, and growing sustainably. And I partnered with Clear to Work, which is a for-profit making business. And I pitched to, and I had a relationship with Brendan Power from Clear to Work, and I pitched to him the idea and the necessity for affordable education for boards of directors and management committees for not-for-profits in Australia. So we came up with Stronger Boards. And so that's an example where a social enterprise worked for the profit-making business to provide a social need.
So Yolie, we're just about out of time. Do you have long to wrap up?
No, very quickly. It's important to work with the social enterprise landscape. So it's exploding at the moment. So there's statewide social enterprise networks like Queensland Social Enterprise Council, Social Enterprise Network in Victoria, governments providing more funding, other states are gaining momentum, there's strategies, universities are actively engaged, private courses being set up with Impact Boom 110, lots of providers, sector support. The landscape is just growing phenomenally. It's exciting, and we need to be a part of that and seeing what trends are happening. Voila, I finished. So I believe that not-for-profits need to be thinking more socially entrepreneurially to become more sustainable as we regenerate ourselves into the future. Thank you.